The Projection Booth podcast is sponsored by Scarecrow Video. Try out Scarecrow's rent-by-mail service. Choose from over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Visit scarecrow.com today.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Todavía no puedo creerlo. Sin embargo, esa destrucción en la capilla fue hecha por alguien que odia cualquier manifestación religiosa. Para ese ser, la capilla fue un terrible antagonista. Cuando yo estudié en la Universidad de París, me fue probado una y otra vez que la posesión diabólica era mera tontería. Fue el resultado de los desvaríos de una mente insana.
¡Daniela! ¡Daniela!
Ellos me enseñaron que la religión era una farsa y una forma de esclavitud, y que había llegado la hora de romper las cadenas de la superstición, el yugo de la mentira y la falsedad. Soy un hombre de ciencia, y ahora me encuentro frente a algo sobrenatural, que en verdad me atemoriza. Esta mujer estaba muerta. Pero había un hálito de maldad dentro de ella, listo para revivir y atacar a seres inocentes. Eso solo podría ser la obra de lo que ustedes llaman el demonio. Alucarda.
God the Father commands thee. God the Son commands thee. God the Holy Ghost commands thee. No!
Con Claudio Brook. David Silva. Tina Romero. Susana Kamini. Adriana Roer. Tina French. Alucarda, dirigida por Juan López Moctezuma.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Mr. Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
Hello, sir.
Also back in the booth is my Chasing Chevy Chase co-host, Mr. Mark Begley.
I like it.
Good modern problems reference there, yes. Shocktober 2025 continues with a look at Juan López Moctezuma's Alucarda. Released in 1977, the film stars Susana Kamini as Justine, a young woman who is cloistered at a convent with the mysterious Alucarda, played by Tina Romero. The two form an instant bond with each other and the Dark Lord himself. We will be spoiling this film as much as we can, so if you haven't seen Alucarda, turn off the podcast and come back after you have. It's just as simple as that. And by the way, it's available over on archive.org. Really nice print of it. So there you go.
It's on Criterion Channel right now, too.
I'm not Mr. Big Bucks. I can't afford the Criterion Channel. I spend all money
Nor can I.
I'm just Mr. Moneybags going around here subscribing to a $12.99 a month channel. Yeah, I'm living high on the hog.
I spend all my money over on the RuPaul channel and the Taskmaster channel myself. But Ryan, when was the first time you saw Alucarda? And I think I know the answer. And what did you think?
So, well, the first time I had even heard of it is when you were proposing by the time I actually got around to it. When I knew that this episode was coming up, I watched it. I believe it was Friday. So I'm an Alucarda virgin, basically.
Well, virgins are appreciated around here. Do you have any knife marks across your chest or anything?
I do, but I don't care to share it over video. I like to describe it. It gets a better input.
Very nice. And Mark, how about yourself?
Well, I was trying to figure this out. I knew I had watched it before I had Letterboxd. I used to keep an Excel spreadsheet of all the horror movies I watched, mainly so that I didn't keep repeating myself, which I did anyway. But I was looking through it yesterday and I realized that the newer quote unquote movies that were close on the spreadsheet were all from 2016. So long story short, I watched it for the first time sometime in 2016, had heard about it at least a couple years prior to that. And I probably read about it when I was in my early 20s because of some of the big, massive film books I have. In particular, this really big book, the Encyclopedia of Horror, that went from, I don't know, I guess the beginning of film to like 1985, shortly before it was published. And it's in that book. I couldn't find it in any of my other film books, but I know I had heard the name. And where I stumbled on it recently was probably somewhere online, one of those websites, 10 movies you've never seen, 10 best horror movies you don't know about, and all that shit that usually isn't true. But for this one, it was. And it took me a while to track it down because it wasn't streaming anywhere. There was no Criterion channel back then.
Back in my day, there was no Criterion channel. We had Film Movement, and we were happy.
We had to watch cable for 5 hours a day just to get the sensation.
I looked for it on all, on demand, on all the channels that we were subscribed to. I looked for it on Shudder, on Netflix, everything. There's so many more channels now and streaming service. But anyway, I believe I just watched it on YouTube. There was a serviceable copy on YouTube. I think it may have been missing a few minutes, although I know my initial reaction and on further watching, it doesn't feel like anything was cut out. The nudity was definitely intact. The gore was intact as far as I can remember. And it was one of those where it lived up to the hype in my mind. I know that I did some reading up on it before I watched it, and most people were like, it's insane. It's just filled with screaming, and there's nudity and gore, and it goes places you don't expect. And a lot of films from that time didn't go. And I was like, yeah, I buy that. I buy it.
It does all that 77 minutes.
That tight 78.
I did find one that was 114
Yeah,
minutes.
I think that's what I watched.
I didn't really see very many differences. I couldn't read about any differences as far as that went. So, yeah, maybe it's just plays slightly faster. I'm not sure. It could be a whole NTSC versus PAL CCAM kind of thing. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't see a whole lot of differences either between the two. This was a relatively new watch for me. Kind of like you, I had read about it for years and years. I've always wanted to check out Moctezuma's work because he is in that same camp with some of my favorite filmmakers, such as Jodorowsky and Arabal and Roland Topor. We talked, I can't remember if it was this year or the previous year, about Angels and Cherubs, the Corkidi film. And he was kind of in that same camp. And so his movies, and he was not just a filmmaker, but he was kind of one of these guys where I want to say he did comic books, he had a radio show, he was a man of many, many talents, and filmmaking was just one of those. I believe he was a producer on Fondo Elise, and I want to say also with El Topo he was as well. And this falls into that nunsploitation movement that was going on in the 70s. I think that was kind of a answer to things like Ken Russell's The Devils. They make references to nuns losing their mind, at least in the book of The Exorcist. I don't know if they do in the film of The Exorcist talk about the Devils of Loudun. There are some cases that they read out in this movie that would fall into that as well. Even things like Rosemary's Baby, I think, falls into this as far as the whole daughter of the devil, child of the devil kind of thing. So this kind of mashes a lot of that stuff together, as well as relying a lot on the Sheridan Le Fanu novel Carmilla. And I listened to that on Audible, and that was a lot of fun. It was a kind of like a radio produced version. So you had different actors reading different parts and did a really good job, kept me on the edge of my seat. And there are very similar things in this as far as this vampirous woman, though they don't really talk about vampirism in this film. It's kind of like Angels and Cherubs in that way, that there's vampirism, and they even respect some of the ideas of passing the vampirism around. But here it's more, there's some paganism and then just anti-Catholicism that happens throughout this whole film.
I have a little bit of a problem with the nunsploitation angle because the nuns don't really go crazy in this, and we're not getting naked nuns cavorting around trying to seduce the priest or the townsfolk or each other or the girls. I almost feel like it's more of a one of the mini Exorcist ripoffs from the mid-70s. Beyond the Door, I mean, there's just, I mean, can rattle off a whole list for the episode, I guess, but that was really big. It's not hit upon as much, but they talk about, especially the priest in this, talks about possession much more than vampirism or the sexual nature of Alucarda and Justine's relationship or anything like that. It's more about, oh, they're possessed, and this is what happens when you're possessed, and we're probably going to be possessed too, so be on the lookout for that. And I was kind of scanning through, trying to find older reviews of the film, but all I could find were recent ones. And in one I read, they said that the sound designer for this film was the same person who did the sound design for The Exorcist. And I could not verify that online. That doesn't match the IMDb credit information for both those films. Christopher Thompson was the sound designer for The Exorcist, and Alucarda is not listed in his credits. Whether that's here nor there, I don't know. But there is some familiarity with the sound design of the creatures that we just hear, particularly at the beginning of the film when Alucarda's mom has given birth to her. We get a little sense of it. And then when she is older and back at that mausoleum with Justine, we hear them again. And it does have a familiarity with the sounds, the demon sounds in The Exorcist.
It's kind of ironic. This is the second movie this month for Shocktober where we have a main character named Justine. And I know for sure with the earlier film that it was a reference to Desaad, and I'm pretty darn sure here it's also a reference to Desaad. And the name Alucarda always cracks me up because it so reminds me of Ed Wood in Ed Wood when he's talking about Dr. Acula.
Well, you know, I don't believe in thinking small, so I've got a whole slate of pictures for you. You ready? Okay. The vampire's tomb. The ghoul goes west. And Dr. Acula.
Dr. Acula. I don't get it.
Dr. Acula.
Oh, I get it. I don't like it.
But it'll star Bela Lugosi.
Oh, Lugosi. Lugosi's all washed up. What else you got?
Yeah, we get it. It's Dracula spelled backwards. Okay. But it's a cool name.
But the way they say it in the movie, it just sounds like a Spanish or Mexican name. I'm like, oh, that rolls right off their tongues. That's great.
And I'm not sure where this is supposed to be set because it's got a European feel, even though I believe they shot this in Mexico. But then when they go to a crypt and they have Lucy from the actual Dracula story, that's her mom in this. Like Lucy, what is it, Westerna or whatever? It's like
Westerna, yeah. Or Westenra. Like, yeah, Westerna, I think.
And it's like, oh, that's my mom. She died 15 years ago. I'm like, okay, well, that tells me how old you are. And it also tells me that this is set in a Bram Stoker universe as well. So, all right, that's kind of cool.
I think that gets changed. Now, this is sort of another thing that's neither here nor there. Sorry to interrupt, but that 15 years kind of, I'm like, oh, they're supposed to be 15. Okay. And at one of the reviews I read, they talked about the girls being 18, like the mom died 18 years ago. And I'm like, did they change this? So it's not so awful. But that wasn't the version I watched. Obviously said, 15 years ago. That's how old we are, Justine. I'm like, oh, okay. You look 15.
She does. Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say that all the actresses in here are really good. I was really happy to see Claudio Brook. He's one of two people because Tina Romero plays both Alucarda and her own mother in that opening scene. And then Claudio Brook plays that. He seems to change through it. He plays this Dr. Ozek character who seems to be a man of science versus this, they call him a hunchback gypsy on IMDb. And I know it's not cool to say gypsy anymore. So I guess hunchback Romani. But at the same time, he doesn't look like a Romani. He looks like a faun to me. And when we see him, faun as in the half man, half goat creature, very bacchanalian type of creature, and very much to me, kind of a representative of Lucifer. And even though when we first see him delivering the baby, he looks slightly different there. And I know that Alucarda's mother, I guess Lucy, says,
"Please promise me that you will protect her, and don't let him take her away."
And I think him in that case is Satan himself, but is this guy that's delivering the baby, is he also an agent of Satan? And the crypt that they're by, or the temple, very, very pagan to me as far as those statues. And even when it comes to Alucarda herself, like one of the first things that we see is her dumping a whole bunch of objects onto the bed. She's like, oh, look at my treasures. And she dumps all this stuff on there. And I'm just like, well, these are almost all fetish objects. And it's all nature stuff. And then the way that they have that great cut when she's got the clump of dirt with the little red spiders on there, and then cut, and we're suddenly outside, and they're still continuing the scene. It's like we've completely changed locations, and she starts talking about, oh, these spiders are just like us. They're identical, and kind of like forming this bond with Justine already.
We just teleported. And I meant to point out when you were talking about the doctor and what he represents, it's fitting that if he represents Satan, that he looks kind of like Garrick Roberts.
Claudio Brooks had been in a ton of things, and we're actually going to be talking a lot more about him in 2026 as we talk about Simon of the Desert. He worked a lot with Buñuel and was in, I think, Exterminating Angel. I don't know if he was in Elle or not, but he was definitely Simon in Simon of the Desert. And him with that crazy kind of freight wig and the big fake teeth and the long kind of billy goat beard that he has. And it's interesting because that character is actually in Carmilla. There's a Romani guy who comes by and is talking with the two girls. There's some similarities between Carmilla and this movie, but that is one of them. And especially where he's like, oh, I'll sell you a trinket. I'll give you a little good luck charm kind of thing. And it just adds really to the creep factor, especially because he just keeps coming back. And there's even a moment where he just kind of comes out of the shadows later on and just is right there. And he has this knife. What does he say? Something about like the knife is made out of tears. And that's the knife that kind of seals their pact between Justine and Alucarda.
Well, I wondered if he was even really there in the room when they were having the ritual, because I'm like, where the fuck did he come from? He's just there. Okay. And then he's gone, and there's a goat, and that kind of goes towards your faun metaphor as well. And I almost wish there were more people playing multiple characters, because it gives it that theatrical feel. And I mean, my daughter was in a play at the end of her school year last year, and that people were all, playing multiple roles. And when I was in London, that happened a lot. And that leads also to that whole thing with Jodorowsky and Topor and their theater. What was it? Theater of the Absurd or whatever they all...
It was the Panic movement. Yeah.
Panic movement. Yeah. And I think Buñuel does some of that in some of his movies as well. I love that. I wish there were more. That I wish that the Sister Angelica was somebody else in the film as well. And
you wish that it was fucking with your mind more than it did.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. like, who, that guy looks kind of familiar. Brooks doesn't look familiar in both those roles. You'd be hard pressed to know that was him if you didn't read the credits or read up on the movie. But obviously, Tina Romero was playing Alucarda and her own mom and stuff like that. But yeah, I just love doppelgangers and doubling and stuff in films anyway. And I could have used more. Like if the daughter, Brooks, Dr. Osek's daughter, had been one of the nuns or something.
Or even the woman that lives with the fawn out in the forest and tries to do the palm reading, like had that been one of the older nuns, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to hold my tongue.
I'm trying to remember which film it was we talked about. I think just last year. It might have been a Jess Franco film. I don't think it was A Virgin Among the Living Dead. I think it was something else where at the end of the movie, or maybe it was Belle from Hell. I think it might have been Belle from Hell, where it kind of reminded me of this whole thing with Mel Pertwee, where at the end of the film, you find out, all of these characters that were in this house are people in the real world, very Wizard of Oz.
I'm home at last.
Oh, you must have had a bad dream.
No. I was on this terrible mountain ruled by the evil Dr. Klon. And there were prisoners and Jake was there and Slim and Ben. Maybe it was just a dream.
And quite a nasty one, young feller.
It was a dream of extraordinary magnitude.
He doesn't even recognize that the people that are inside of the psych hospital were the people that were in his fantasy. I kind of would have liked that with these nuns. And these nuns, we have to talk about these habits that they have. Kind of the way that they change color, too, because at first they look like they're white, but then they seem to get pinker and redder through the movie. And at times you get that, I've talked recently, too, as far as like that kind of like menstrual pattern between legs and everything. And they don't look like any habits that I've ever seen in my life. They kind of remind me of like almost like mummies with their faces open. And the one image that I kept thinking of, and this is going to be maybe a deep cut, they reminded me of when Frodo gets attacked by Shelob and then Sam pulls the webbing off of his face. They look like that, like they've been cocooned in a spider web almost.
So when you were mentioning habits, I was thinking stuff like smoking cigarettes or using profanity, or
they do have some bad habits. I was thrown off the first 2 times I watched this by their habits. It just really was distracting. And this one I let it go. And I'm like, for me, the increasing red and pinks kind of go along with their self-flagellation. And is it really blood or is it some kind of strange design that they have? I started on this viewing, I felt like, okay, this is their actual blood and they're just letting it soak their clothes. That's like part of their thing. This particular sect of nuns does this for some reason. Because like you said, some of the menstrual patterns were like real heavy and some didn't really have it. And anytime people flagellate in films, and we'll see this in the other film that we talk about later, I like it when it shows up then as kind of the mark for them. Like, they try to cover up and then you can see the blood coming through the back or through the front in the case of the other film. But yeah, I thought, okay, yeah, this is just perfectly symbolic of their lives. And at least they are actually, that's why the nunsploitation thing kind of throws me off for this too, is because they actually, do the flagellation. They're trying to stay untempted. And I think that brings up kind of the bigger point of this, or the bigger problem with this film is it feels like we're leading up with Dr. Ozek, the man of science, who is patently like, this is baloney. We're past this now. We have science. We don't believe these silly superstitions. But then that's, by the end of the film, that's all thrown out the window. It's like, oh yeah, I buy it. Okay. Now I got to save my daughter. Yeah, everything you were saying is true. So is it really an indictment of Catholicism when everything that they're saying is really true? She's really possessed. She's doing this. She's doing that. And you guys are probably going to get possessed too.
They're just too impotent to do anything about it. Like that's the symbology of it.
Are they though? Because they make her disappear at the end.
She can run into a room and just scream Beelzebub and like fire starts, It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
The scene when they're in that crypt where the Lucy Westerna coffin is, the way that the set is dressed and the way that the production design is just out of this world. It looks like Gaudi was on set to make this, as far as the walls feel like they're melting at times. And yes, you've got curtains and cobwebs and all of these things, but it looks like the actual walls themselves are melting. And you go from that, and I don't know why she's like, oh, let's open the coffin. And then like screams and moans and all this stuff takes over the soundtrack. I know I also read that this movie is very, very screamy. I didn't find it to be as screamy as other movies.
It's not that bad.
It's not as screamy as like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
And then you go from that set into their church. That is fucking insane. Where you have the Christ on the cross and he looks moist. It looks like he just got pulled out of a grave and or like unwrapped as a mummy. You've got him up on the cross, and then you have, I'm looking at the shot right now, you probably have a dozen, half dozen
at least
other Christ-like figures around, all with their arms outstretched, all behind him. And then you've got this like 3 or 4 rows of candles all built up, and it looks like the whole thing is just melted wax, like they've never cleaned that. It's just been wax over and over and over again. And then you've got that incredibly dark and kind of mystical look to it. And then you have these young girls in their dresses, and they all just look like prim and proper and like Sunday go to meeting type of clothes. And they're just like, yep, we're here. We're the novitiates. Lay it on us. Let's hear some of these sermons here, Father. And the main priest, wow, this guy, he's chewing the scenery like nobody's business, and I'm here for it, every single minute of it.
Something that this movie really reminded me of is Anna Biller's The Love Witch. Dramatic performances. It's clear that Anna Biller has seen this film.
That kind of overwrought thing that they bring to it, and that arched eyebrow type of thing, that feels very Alucarda.
Well, and the set dressing, especially in that mausoleum with the draped cloth, was another, and I may be misremembering that. I've only seen El Topo once, but I seem to remember stuff like that in El Topo, and just those scenes when he's walking through that western town, and then also the caves that they live in, that he lives in with those people for a while. That all seemed kind of familiar to me while watching this. And that mausoleum or whatever it is where she gives birth to Alucarda and keeps creeping back up. I want to say as she's giving birth to her, there's like the corpse of a dog or an animal on the ground lying next to her. And I don't know if I just imagined that or if anybody else caught onto that. Because that little detail caught my eye, and I thought, not necessary. I mean, it's creepy enough as it is, but that really kind of put it over the top for me. And then it matched up later on when Justine disappears, and then there's her skeleton basically on the ground, and the same thing happens to Alucarda at the end as well. And I'm like, oh, maybe that was somebody else that this happened to. I don't know.
I agree with you as far as the nunsploitation might be an improper label for this, but I think anytime you have nuns in the 70s and they're not acting like the Flying Nun or somebody like that, like Sally Fields, you are in for a wild ride. That first sermon that's going on where you have all the canted angles and you've got all the nuns who look like they're, I don't know, petrified or something. And then you get those young girls, and the one girl stands up and she's just having this moment and everything and just starts screaming. And I'm like, okay, this kind of like overwrougtness. And I want to say, isn't there an orgy scene that takes place later on, like out in the country? And it seems to be that there's one nun who's still inside, and she seems to be the most pure of all of them. And she's the one that causes that beam of light to cut through the room. What a great effect that is.
To speak on the nunsploitation thing, because I know I mentioned earlier that I have Criterion Channel on that under their nunsploitation category, they have Benedetta, which I haven't seen since the theaters. but this stylistically kind of reminded me a little bit, or allegorically, because I understand wanting to fuck Christ. I totally get that. The thing that completely threw Benedetta is the wooden dildo. I would assume that would use splinters, but I don't know much about wooden dildos, apparently.
Well, it's either that or you've got the bone dildo from the Devils, right? Isn't that, well, that's cut out from a lot of versions, but I remember seeing that very specifically. Maybe one day we'll be ready to actually release the full director's cut of the Devils.
Oh, that'll be a good day indeed.
The orgy scene, was that not in Satanico Pandemonium?
Well, there definitely is an orgy scene in Satanico Pandemonium, but I want to say...
Oh, I know it. Yes. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. I thought that was the Romani people out there.
I thought it was the nuns. Maybe it's the Romani, but it just felt like there were so many.
The one kind of frizzy-haired leader of the Romani, she gets like shot in the neck or something. I don't know what happened to her. All of a sudden,
it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
She's hit in the neck and there's blood, but I'm like, well, did somebody shoot her? What did that mean? What's the implication here? Was it a spirit or Satan or something like that? But they're doing their thing over here, having the orgy, and they're doing their thing in the convent, the nuns were. So I thought it was just kind of an interplay of the two quote unquote religions of the film.
This is probably a stretch, but when the woman got shot, I immediately thought, oh, just like student protesters. I don't know why. If this is coming in that, like, obviously this is 9 years post 1968, but it just felt like it was kind of speaking to like the rebelliousness of youth and how the system tries to put you down. We're talking about how quick this movie moves. And we've got the sermon scene. Justine faints. We've got Alucarda coming in, talking with Justine. Alucarda loses her fucking mind and starts spinning around, and her hair starts going everywhere. And she's just grabbing her head and spinning around, reaches down, sees that Justine has a cross around her neck, reaches down, pulls it out, again, keeps screaming. And it's within seconds that she pulls out that knife. And then within a few more seconds that suddenly it goes from this kind of pristine daytime scene to the lights changing and her bending backwards, and then the goat man coming in. And then, like, oh, I love this, that she's in this great backwards pose where she's bent over almost as far as she can go. And we cut away to maybe like a window or something. We cut back. It's the same shot, but now she's completely naked and she still has that knife, and you've got Justine on the floor. And it's like, okay, now we're going to do this. You know, the goat man picks her up and takes off all of Justine's clothes. They kneel together, and you get that pose that we've seen for this movie of the two girls looking at each other. And then the other image that I've seen from this movie so many times, which is the goat man disappears, and then the real goat's there standing between them. And it's like, oh, wow. And that's when they have the whole breast cutting. And I believe there's a bloody kiss that happens. And that's, for me, one of the most vampiric moments of this movie is them making this bond. And it feels like now they are one when they do that.
So what you're saying is this is a perfect motion.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, 5 minutes in the movie and they just get through all that stuff. I'd like to see James Wan do the same thing.
Pacing is much more frantic than the other film that we'll be talking about, for sure, which I appreciate. Again, that tight 78, man, that it just flies by. There's really never a moment where something isn't happening in this film, and I appreciate that. You don't get a lot of character development in a situation like that, but that's okay. Who's Justine really, other than an orphan, 15-year-old, quote-unquote 15-year-old orphan whose parents just died? And do we really need to know any more about her? Why does Alucarda take such a liking to her? I don't know. But, you know, sometimes that's what teen girls do. They get really attached to each other and have strange rituals in their bedrooms.
Well, I've seen Heavenly Creatures. I know what happens. They get really turned on by Mario Lanza and Orson Welles. Third man Orson Welles? Yes, please. the relationship between the two, again, that's where the Carmilla of it comes in, because it is played so sweet, and I can't say innocent, because it definitely feels like there's a moment where they are having sex in Carmilla, or at least there's an orgasm that's represented between them. But so the story of Carmilla is basically there's a stagecoach coming down the road and it crashes, and there's this woman in there with her daughter, and she's like, listen, I've got to get going. I've got this business that I need to take care of. I'm going to be back in 3 weeks. Do you mind, kind sir and noble gentleman that you are, watching my daughter for 3 weeks and I'll be back? And he's like, oh yeah, of course, no problem. She's like, well, the only thing is though, you can't ask anything about her. She cannot tell you anything about herself. Just, trust me, kind of thing. And he's like, okay, yeah, no big deal. She'll be best friends with my daughter, Lisa. So Lisa and her get together, and immediately you're just like, as a reader, you're like, okay, yeah, she's a vampire. Things are fucked up. She's a vampire. And it's just like them going back and forth. And yes, this whole like, we're best friends and we're out in the forest and we're playing together and all these kind of things. And then, suspicion starts to mount. There are times where, there are girls all around the village that start dying under mysterious circumstances. Our main heroine, Lisa, she starts getting weaker and weaker. She starts having these dreams. She dreams that there's this black, a cat-like creature that comes in at night. And she also dreams that Carmilla is there as well. She has this blue mark on her neck. And she has talked about how she's felt piercing going on with her neck and all this. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then Carmilla eventually kind of disappears, and they're going to try to find her. And that's when they run into this other guy, this general, who tells the story of what happened to his daughter. And it's basically the exact same thing, but he figured out what Carmilla was. And then they go to the tomb. So again, we've got this tomb scene and, find her grave and, do the whole head stake, heart staking, head cutting off, burning the body, throwing the ashes into the river where they can be separated and never connect again. This whole thing of like the girls and their relationship and just this kind of, like you're saying, these strange rituals that they get up to, that's where I'm just like, yeah, this is very, very Carmilla in these points. But really the vampirism, like I said, other than the tasting of the blood from one another, and then really the part where Justine is in that crypt and that is completely filled with blood. And that almost to me is like a Bathory type of thing rather than a vampire type of thing.
And that's really the only vampirism in the film. I mean, them kissing each other and licking the blood off each other is more of a ritualistic thing to me than pure vampirism. Like, I don't think that Alucarda is a vampire, actually, and turned Justine into a vampire, but Justine definitely is vampiric at the end. She bites into Sister Angelica like nobody's business. So that angle pops up. But I mean, Carmilla is used, I don't know how many movies from the 70s.
Anytime there's sexy vampires. Yes.
Yeah. It's like loosely based on.
Yeah, I think even when we talked about the Jean Roland film, it was like, oh yeah, of course. Those sexy vampire twins, those are from Carmilla as well. It's like, are they though?
Daughters of Darkness.
See, I would love to see a horned up version of Dracula's daughter that was in this kind of format. That would be 100% interesting to me. Give James Whale the money and a time machine and a cure to death, and then send back to 1977 and say, now make Dracula's daughter. I would be on board for that 100%.
As you were describing the plot of the novel, I just kept thinking of Cat People, because that sort of feels like what's going on in Cat People. And I mean the original
good
Cat
pull.
People.
Yeah.
Not
the Schrader.
Cat People.
No.
That idea of the girl being stalked, and it's often in the shape of a Black Panther, right? Am I
exactly
getting that correct?
You're not wrong.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
I've only seen that movie a couple of times, and there's obvious, I think, lesbian overtones in that film as well.
So it's after this blood ritual that we then cut to, and you're totally right, it is the Romani that are out in the forest. There's men, there's women, and that big-haired woman is definitely out there. Cross-cutting that with, Justine and Carmilla dead center in the middle as all the people are kind of twirling around them. And then you've got, is it Sister Germaine who's back at the cloisters, and she is praying, and she kind of looks like she's in pain. She's writhing around. That's where you also get that real menstrual blood coming in, but she's kind of pink at that moment. Because we've seen, it looks like as the ritual is taking place, it starts to rain blood outside, because we cut back to that window that I was talking about, where we cut to that when we removed Alucarda's clothes, and we keep cutting out to that window, and that window is also where that beam of light kind of comes through as well. And we've got the gypsy woman outside, and she's got her hands up and praying to whatever god she's praying to. And then you've got the nun inside, and she's praying as well. And it feels like the two ceremonies are kind of going back and forth, and pretty soon the nun starts to get blood all over her head and just starts to get more and more bloody. Of course, there's no explanation as to what's going on there, but you do see it almost looks like she starts crying blood at one point, and then her whole face gets covered.
That's Sister Angelica, if I'm not mistaken.
Angelica, thank you.
She's the one that is obsessed with Justine as well. So she's kind of fighting Alucarda's obsession with her.
And she levitates. Yeah.
And then she levitates. That shot is one of my favorites. Alucarda on the bed. There's one kind of mid-frame shot of her just on the bed. I think Justine has had one of her fits or something. Wonderful shot. And then when she's just levitating in a room, that's a gorgeous shot.
I don't remember this movie saying segunda parte right after that. Did your guys' version say that? Does it say part 2 right after that levitation starts?
I don't think so.
Because there was one version of this I watched that did have that in there.
I watched the AI.
Oh, the cleaned up one? Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know what was AI about it. It looked the same as what I had watched in the past, pretty much. Everybody wasn't all smoothed out and fake looking or anything. So I don't know what they cleaned up with AI, but
yeah, I still saw real change marks, and there's still some scratches at the very beginning, but
I was going to point out the cigarette burns were there, for my version as well. So it's definitely a dupe of a dupe of a dupe.
Yeah, and I think it was Mondo Macabro that put this out years ago, probably the cleanest version of it, and I don't know if they've ever gone back and done a re-restoration of it.
That was one of the things I read. They were going to go back and re-scan it and everything for a Blu-ray or maybe even a 4K. And by that time, the print had disappeared. So I don't think you're going to get anything much better than what they did. And that's probably why somebody decided to use AI to clean it up a little bit more. But it didn't have that weird AI effect on it to me as I was watching it, because I was hesitant to watch it, but I wanted to do that one because it had the longest running time of the ones that I saw that you had available. So I just was like, I don't know what's AI about this.
Both of you guys have watched the longer version of the film. Is it in widescreen? Because it was full screen when I watched Criterion. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't giving me a crappy copy.
No, and I don't think it's even an open matte situation. I think that is the aspect ratio, because it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of headroom in most of the shots. So that's usually the kind of tell on those. It's like, why is the ceiling so high? I think that was just how it was shot.
If I had to make a guess, it would be just regular 35. But yeah, it was definitely more Academy ratio. I was a little surprised about that as well, but I don't think Moctezuma had a lot of money to make this. And then watching that interview with Guillermo del Toro that's on the Mondo Macabro disc, which is funny to see young Guillermo del Toro again. And then also del Toro was so impressed with this movie, he says that that's why he cast Claudio Brook in Kronos, which is great. God, I love that movie so much. I kind of wish that he just stuck to making Mexican horror films, because between that and Pan's Labyrinth and The Devil's Backbone, those are my favorites of his.
I think I lean that way too.
I seem to remember reading your review of Blade 2, and it was pretty pornographic.
That's a deep cut for all those out there.
Yeah, Mimic was on a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know, like maybe the third act or something, and my daughter was in there. I was like, I kind of want to watch this in full now. I'm kind of looking forward to his Frankenstein, so I'm definitely going to watch that when it hits Netflix. But yeah, those Mexican films are pretty delightful.
I found Devil's Backbone to be actually genuinely scary, which I can't say about a lot of horror movies that I watch these days.
Yeah, and I don't mean delightful as in they're pithy and fun. I just mean the look of them, because they're pretty, they're not fun.
Well, and to have the wartime background in Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth is depressing. There are pretty depressing films, but they're beautifully shot and have a lot of really interesting, imaginative stuff.
Great atmosphere.
Yes, very much so.
Very much like this, where it looks so often like we are in darkness, but it's actually daytime, like when Justine and Alucarda have fit in church, and they just start spewing out the most blasphemous stuff that you possibly could imagine. Again, to your point, Mark, very Exorcist as far as what Linda Blair is doing in there and some of the awful things that she's doing with the cross. They're not doing that in this, but a lot of the words that they're saying are awful. And I like that too, that shot you were talking, Ryan, as far as, what's the ratio? Because you've got the two of them framed, and then you'll cut to like a single of Justine, and you'll cut to a single of Alucarda, then you cut to a two shot of both of them. And it's almost like the camera's just moving slightly as you do that. It's almost jump cuts. And I really like that effect. It's such an intense emotional moment that it just adds so much to it.
Kind of like when the DVDs of Stanley Kubrick's movies came out, they were all in full screen. And so you had the inevitable comparison. Well, which scene is better in this version and this? And like you have the scene in The Shining where he's using the axe to chop down the door, and the camera moves with him every single time he takes a swing. And it's one of those things where it's like, I guess being in full screen actually makes The Shining a better movie, which is weird.
Just like Stanley wanted.
Full Metal Jacket was on one of the cable channels recently, and it was presented 4:3. So, but yeah, that I wrote in my notes. I'm like, oh, they keep going from 2 shots to 1 shot to 2 shots to 1 shot. I was like, I really enjoyed that as well. There were those nice little touches throughout that were more cinematic, but there's still a lot of theatrical stuff going on in this. And that point that you made about feeling like we're in darkness, and that reminds me of stage plays as well, where a lot of times it's just a black background, and yet you're supposed to feel like you're in this setting right now, or you're in that setting. And there are some movies that utilize that theatrical technique kind of, to hide maybe not having a full set built, or not all the 4 walls are up, or there's no ceiling in this set. Because some of that stuff is definitely sets, if not all of it, all of the interiors. So it's kind of like, well, let's just, leave the backgrounds in black, and we don't have to worry about set dressing and things like that.
Because a lot of this takes place in, I believe they call them cells at a nunnery. A lot of it takes place in Justine's cell. And yeah, you get those shots from up above. So I'm just like, okay, there probably is no ceiling. And this probably is just a big set, because they use that quite a few times. And even when it comes to like the whipping of the nuns, the scourging of the nuns, it's very tight on a lot of these shots. Kind of talking about that going back and forth thing too with their breakdown in church. Also a little reminiscent in a scene pretty close to that, where Alucarda goes to the confessional, and you get the front of the confessional. There's no doors to the confessional, and it's just her on one side and the main priest on the other side. And I love that she reaches through the window and basically grabs this guy by the dick. At least that's my interpretation of it. And he's just like, you gotta help this girl. This is crazy. And that's what I think leads to the whole, we need to stop this, where it comes from, and start scourging all of these nuns. That's a wild scene to have them, because they're not necessarily whipping themselves. It's not a self-flagellation. These women are being whipped big time, and you've got some great effects of the blood across them.
Yeah, it wasn't self-flagellation. You're right. I forgot that the robed men were there. Yeah.
Yeah, the monks, I guess they are.
I guess. They just seem like kind of there to do odd jobs or something.
They're mad monks, man. They're mad monks.
They don't intervene a lot. When one goes to get the doctor, and that's about it. I kind of forget that they're there, to be honest with you. It's all about particularly Sister Angelica, and then I can't remember what the Mother Superior's name was other than Mother Superior, but you talked about how in Carmilla, and this is true in a lot of vampire movies where they cut the head off to, really make sure this doesn't happen again. And that scene in this movie, although it's not, I guess you could assume that maybe she's a vampire as well, but the one nun that dies and then comes back and the priest chops her head off, I was like, holy shit, this is when it really, really struck me as a little bit more violent than some of the other nunsploitation, in particular the one that we watched for the show here. But
it gives kind of like Fulci vibes and a little bit of Lamberto Bava as well.
And her head, when he puts it back on the altar, I could tell that it was the actress's head. So I just kept waiting for her to like start yelling or screaming or something.
Even now we have your darling Linda's soul. She suffers in torment.
You're going down.
They say that she's dead. They torture Justine to death, basically, because they're looking for the devil's mark. They can't find it. They start poking her.
Where did that go?
Yeah, exactly. They start poking her with all these sharp objects, and then she's dead. But then as she's laying out, you see her hand move, and you're just like, okay. And it's not like the actress moved her hand. You could see her breathing kind of thing. It's a very legit, the hand moves, and you're just like, ooh, this is a creature of the undead. And then I love how the doctor, the man of science, calling him the man of science, even though he's using leeches to try to cure poor Justine.
That was science then. Mike, that was science then.
Oh, yeah. And she just looks like she has been put through the ringer. But like Alucarda looks great the whole time, but Justine just looks run through. The doctor, like, oh, you savages, he's going to save Alucarda. So he takes her home and is just like, oh, yeah, here's my blind daughter. And I'm like, oh, good Lord, what are you doing? You're throwing your daughter to the wolves, almost literally here.
Yeah, and that's another Carmilla kind of, with the daughter in another spot or a girl in another spot. And they just keep mom or whoever keeps taking her to these places to get these girls, I guess. But I think because of Carmilla, I expected her to really try to take Daniela over as well and get kind of hooked in with her. I mean, she steals away with her, but nothing really comes of that. But knowing that Carmilla's story, I thought, oh, this is her second victim now that Justine is dead, basically.
Yeah, I really thought we were going to go that same way as well.
Wouldn't have kept that tight 78, though.
No, like we said, this moves very quickly. There's not a lot of scenes where we're just like, oh, would you hurry up already? Because there's almost always something happening here.
I really appreciate that. And if it was a matter of just not having enough money to flesh things out, I'm totally fine with that.
The image of Justine when she rises from the dead with all that blood all over her is another moment that I've seen stills reproduced. It's fantastic. She looks so good when she comes out, and that blood, especially on her chin, or when she's there and opens, her eyes are open. But then when she looks over at the nun that's opened up the casket, it's like, oh man, that is great. And she just starts clawing at that nun. She's fully nude, covered in blood, almost from head to toe, and just starts scratching at that nun. And you're just like, oh man, I have never seen a woman act like a wild beast like this before.
She has fangs, right? I mean, her teeth are pointy at that point. if I'm not mistaken, or did I imagine? Maybe it was the blood on her in her mouth, but it looked like she had like razor sharp teeth at that point. Maybe not.
I didn't notice that. No.
That image, though, like you say, is along with Justine and Alucarda looking at each other with the goat guy behind them is pretty much, those are the two that you'll find on almost every review online. They use one of those two pictures, and, for good reason.
It's on Letterboxd, on Letterboxd review.
To your point from earlier, I could find some older articles, but nothing very well written. So many of the older reviews of this film were just basically, oh, there's boobs. And that was about it.
Boobs and blood. That was like, those are the key words for just about every article. Yeah, I scanned a lot of the stuff that you sent over. And like I said, tried to look through because a lot of the books that I have are from the 80s. And you would think there would be something in them. Psychotronic, I don't even know if there's anything in the Psychotronic Encyclopedia film about this movie. I don't think there is. Although it could be under a different title, because I know that.
Could it be in the Danny Perry book?
Which one? Guide for the Film Fanatic?
Whichever cult films, I think.
I don't know. I don't know if this is in one of the cult film books. I have 1 and 3, and I don't think it's in either one of those.
Okay.
I think it's a little more obscure, and whether it had a cult following or not, I don't know. Seems like it's one of those films that sort of slipped through the cracks.
Speaking of big books, there's the Antichristo, the Bible of Nasty Nuns Cinema, spelled with an S, and Culture. That covers so many, but it doesn't go that deep into things. I found, because there's Doyle Green's book, The Mexican Cinema of Darkness, there were some good articles in there. But I think that the best written one that I read was from The Supernatural Sublime, The Wondrous Ineffability of the Everyday in Films from Mexico and Spain. What a title. But that really went into, I think it looked at 3 films from the era plus, then it kind of looked at the Devil's Backbone in that chapter as well. And they were talking more about schools for girls in that. And then, of course, they had to say, but, Devil's Backbone, it's these young boys rather than girls. And with Alucarda, it's a convent rather than a school, but just kind of pointing out these similarities between these films. And that one I felt to be one of the better readings of the movie. And they do a nice kind of close reading and then also just put it into more of a context. And I would love to read more about Moctezuma because he seems just like a fascinating character. And it was tough. Like there's a book where it's like 14 interviews with Mexican filmmakers. And I really was glad to see an interview with him because unfortunately he's not with us any longer. And I think he died kind of young. Thank goodness we still have, Arabal and Jodorowsky and some of these guys, but a lot of them, Corquidi's gone, Moctezuma's gone. So yeah, it's called The Mexican Cinema Interviews with 13 Directors by Beatriz Reyes Navarez. I recommend that if you want to actually read what Mr. Moctezuma himself had to say about things.
Well, he didn't make very many films, did he?
No, I think a handful. And interestingly enough, he made there was one with Donald Pleasance. That's probably the most, I think for a while that was the easiest one to find. But I think Mansion of Madness is another one that maybe Mondo Macabro put that out as well. To Kill a Stranger is the title of the one with Donald Pleasance. Again, titles may vary, such as Dr. Tarr's Torture Dungeon.
Torture Garden.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen her under that title. You mentioned School for Girls, that kind of subgenre, and that's where my mind kept going with this film, even comparing it in my head to Picnic at Hanging Rock. And very different, but you get some of that. I don't want to say, there wasn't a lot of screaming in there and no one's doing the whirling dervish thing, but that idea of not understanding what's happening to these girls or what happened to the ones that disappeared or even the ones that are still there or the girl that commits suicide and stuff like that. There's a film called The House That Screamed that is a school for girls and lots of creepy stuff is happening. And I think they all live like in a house together. kid from Deep End, I believe, is in that, has a small role in that as like the headmistress's son that's creeping around the house and going in the walls and spying on the girls and stuff. And then kind of back to that idea of the temptation that's happening in this film. So not School for Girls, but this sort of like, don't lead me into temptation. Like, please don't. This makes me think of Blood on Satan's Claw. I don't know if either of you have seen that, but how those kids and that are just kind of like, fuck yeah, let's go, man. let's piece this beast back together and then start doing his bidding and have a heck of a time. There's another Mexican film called Poison for the Fairies about two young girls, like preteen girls. And they were actually, I believe the actresses were like 12 or 13. It's sort of that kind of parasitic relationship, like in this film, where one of the girls tries to lead the other one astray, like acts like she's a witch and can do these horrible things. And these strange coincidences happen that make the other girl believe like, oh, this is for real. And, leads to tragic things at the end as usual. And even the idea of the satanic panic, which we're kind of getting towards with this film. I know that I've seen conflicting views or conflicting reports on when this came out. Some things say 75, some things say 77, but we're getting to the 80s. And again, that idea of going along with the temptation, like fear no evil, although I think that kid is actually Satan's son or something like that. But evil speak always comes to mind for me because it's Clint at this school for boys, and he kind of falls in
a possessed computer.
Yeah, in his possessed computer. But he's like, yeah, let's do this so that I can fuck these people up because I hate them all and give me your power, Satan. So yeah, all that stuff was kind of running through my head as I was watching this. And Dark Waters is a Ukrainian film, I think from the early 90s. It very much feels like a 70s nunsploitation movie. So every time I watch that, I think about Alucarda. Another thing for School for Girls in my mind is Berberian Sound Studio, Peter Strickland's second or third film. And it's all about this sound designer. Yeah, Toby Jones plays this sound mixer, who's tasked with doing this film in Italy, doesn't speak the language, doesn't know what's going on. And you never see the film. He's only there to mix things and, fiddle with the equipment and stuff. You just get the idea of what the film is about by the dubbing that everybody's doing. So their actresses are coming in because, of course, they don't film with sound in Italy. And it's a school for girls. It's like an equestrian school. And there's witchcraft going on, and they're getting possessed. And there's even like a goblin kind of hunchback character that has to get dubbed in the film. And so every time I watch that movie, I think, oh, he's working on Alucarda right now. I love that movie.
So guys, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back after these brief messages. Looking for something superior to streaming? A place with more than 5 times the selection available on all streaming services combined? Check out Scarecrow Video's Rent by Mail service. Select from an unparalleled collection of over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Get in on it now at scarecrow.com and rediscover the wonders of physical media. All right, we are back. We were talking about Alucarda, and let's shift gears a little bit. I was led to believe, as I was doing my research, that there was another film that was supposed to be very similar to this, and it was called Satanico Pandemonium, also known as La Sexorcisto. Woohoo! It's not really that similar at all. In fact, I can see more differences between this and Alucarda than anything. So I was definitely led astray by that, but I had kind of a nice time watching this movie. Did you guys get a chance to see this?
Yeah, I did watch it. I saw those comparisons too in almost everything that I read.
It was the inspiration for Salma Hayek's character in From Dusk Till Dawn. That's where the name comes from.
That checks out, but the rest of it does not.
I saw that too, and I thought, oh, goody. And I'll admit to this, Mike, and I feel kind of bad for it, but not really. I watched this at 1 1/3 speed because within the first 5 minutes, there were 4 minutes of mountain shots slow moving shots of scenery. And I thought, oh, hell no.
Like Manos, the Hands of Fate.
I mean, talk about filler and walking. Her walking, him walking, them walking. And I had beautiful scenery, but I actually prefer the forest in Alucarda much more. But anyway, yeah, I had to speed it up. And that actually made it feel right. The pacings felt much more correct at that pace. And since it didn't really affect the pitch of the sound or anything, I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll just watch it like this. It'll go by a little bit faster. But not really like Alucarda, much more a nunsploitation film. The only other thing I can really say is that it made me feel the way I felt when I used to record Emmanuel films off of Cinemax because I wanted to see naked ladies. And as I was watching those films, I got really bored and fast forwarded it to everything else just to get to the naked ladies. That's how I felt watching this film.
I guess spoilers for Satanico Pandemonium, but this is also a question. The end of the film, I'm led to believe that she has the plague and that most of this movie was her fever dream. Is that what you guys understood?
I think all of the movie was her fever dream because she runs into the devil, quote unquote, devil on the road. That first scene that she's out, he just pops up completely naked in front of her and she kind of flips out and then goes. So it doesn't seem like there was a point where reality and fever dream connected to me. As I thought back about it when we get to the end of the film, I'm like, okay, were they talking about the plague at the beginning of the movie? Did they talk about the plague at all during the movie? Is anybody else afflicted by the plague in the film? Is there some point where we know something probably happened to her and she's now sick? And I couldn't mark that in my head. I didn't go back and look, but I couldn't recall that.
No, and the only thing I could think of is maybe one of these diseased animals maybe passed something over to her, like there was that cross-contamination, but that doesn't make any sense. So use the word pastoral. I mean, this is so pastoral to have freaking baby lambs and her tending to cows and all these things and the beautiful flowers that she has, even I guess it's kind of a makeshift altar that's out there. Also, I was just like, well, that seems kind of pagan to have this altar out in the middle of the forest, but I guess it's some sort of saint that's inside of there. And the devil in this feels very similar insofar as he wears the wool over the shoulders and stuff. Very normal looking, though. Kind of a handsome gentleman. Kind of reminded me of Z-Man, Ronnie Barzell, a little bit at times. And yeah, from one of the first times we see her, the first time she sees him clothed, he's holding an apple. And you're just like, well, gosh, I don't have to be a biblical scholar to figure this out because there's apples and snakes all over the place in this movie. And this half-eaten apple that we see Satan eating at the beginning just keeps showing up. Like she'll just be like walking along and this apple will kind of fall into frame. And it's just like, oh, God forbid. It's the scariest apple ever.
And imagine if that movie was in 3D and that apple just came flying at you in the audience. Oh man, that would really bring it all home. It's rolling slowly towards me. Oh my God.
This was 9 minutes longer than Alucarda, and it might as well have been 30 minutes longer as far as I could tell. I mean, I'm like, oh my God. I think the bad taste in my mouth due to the ending is sort of overshadowing the things that I did like about it. I thought, oh, we're going to have this interesting thing about race. Because I noticed, I'm like, there's an Asian nun here. There's two black nuns. I was going to say African-American, but they're not American. One of them is in distress and she goes to help her and it's because of her race. And I thought, oh, this is interesting especially for this time and even maybe this country. And curious that they're not just completely ignoring the fact that we have, other races in this. I almost said coven.
First off, it's pronounced coven.
I thought, oh, where is this going to lead? And then I was still kind of interested in the fact that she basically helps that gal kill herself. And so that put a little twist on it. But I thought, okay, yeah, I'm kind of buying this. It's just really languid. It's got just a super slow pace. And I kind of gave it away to myself because at some point I was like, is any of this really happening to her? Or is she just imagining all of this? Is she imagining this guy? Is she imagining the other nuns coming in there and molesting her? Or is any of this going on? Or is it an hysterical woman type of film? Is it that?
Like a Carnival of Souls.
Yeah, like Carnival of Souls, or even just Let's Scare Jessica to Death. We don't get an idea that this nun is there for mental health reasons, but you've got that angle in those hysterical woman films where I just returned from the mental hospital and now I'm seeing ghosts. Well, is she really seeing ghosts or vampires in Let's Scare Jessica to Death's case? Or is she going crazy again? And I thought, is that what we're doing here? Is without like a background of her mental health, is that what's happening? Or is this, is any of this really real? Who is this creep that keeps throwing apples at her, showing up naked? And the ending I literally face palmed myself. I just was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Well, and they say, like, did you see the state of her body? And so I was waiting for her to be like completely emaciated or like skeletal or, like something going on with her face, but then they cut back to her and it's like, oh yeah, she looks just normal. I'm like,
perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. The stuff with the race, I was excited for that, especially the one nun when she comes in, it just like berates and physically attacks these black nuns, and that the black nuns are the one that are serving dinner to the rest of the nuns, and how she's praying
sleeping
away
in the hay or whatever.
Yeah, they treat them so like second-class citizens, and the one woman's just like, oh, I'm praying because I'm black, and, I've been cursed with this, and I'm just like, this is an interesting thing. And then they go away from it. And, yeah, there were moments like, when she's using, I can't remember if you pronounce it Salice or Salice, the band across her with all the spikes, and she's doing the self-flagellation and stuff. And like you're saying, like you can see at times the blood that's on her clothes. I was like, okay, again, kind of interesting. But yeah, she's taking care of that cow. The fucking apple shows up. I was like, oh my God, how often are we going to see this apple going on here? And there are times where, because when she removes her habit, she looks very different. So I'm like, are there two nuns in this? Or is this one nun? Or, and there is a lesbian scene that happens. So I was thinking, okay, so is this where we're going to go? Is this the Carmilla moment or whatever? And interesting, you just mentioned Let's Scare Jessica to Death. When you look up the inspiration shared in the Fanu, it actually has Let's Scare Jessica to Death as being based on that. I'm like, I don't see that at all, man.
Well, it is vampiric. That girl from the lake is supposed to be, she's turned all the townspeople into vampires. It's such a weird
it's
kind
so
of
good.
vampire thing, though, in that film. They all have bandages around their necks, but they just seem like creepy zombies more than anything else.
Yeah, it reminds me more of Messiah of Evil than anything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes.
Just about to mention that.
I enjoyed Alucarda so much that when I was like, oh, good, another one? Okay, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm ready for this. I actually watched a couple nunsploitation films for this episode. I also watched one called Killer Nun, which was actually fairly decent, and it's more of a murder mystery. They really make you think that Alida Valli, that's what it is. She's the main nun, and you're following her, and you're like, oh, is she murdering all these people? And I'm not going to ruin that movie because I had a good time watching it, actually. Again, kind of slow, but effective. And, there was, I believe, a lot of lesbian nuns going on in that one, so I've never really gotten into
putting that on my list.
There you go. I've never really gotten into nunsploitation. I still haven't seen, Love Letters from a Portuguese Nun. I still haven't seen, there was one from Japan that was supposed to be good. Oh, it's not Behind Convent Walls. I don't remember the name of it. That one's still on the to watch list, but I watched a couple of these and I was just like, okay, I kind of see what they're doing, but every version treats something a little bit differently. There is no, oh, this is the plot for so many of these, and they just do a little variation. Each one seemed to do a little bit different, other than the idea of at some point you're going to get, like you said, Mark, an orgy. And in Alucarda, it's the Romani people having an orgy. In this one, it's when she comes back to the convent and you think like, oh, they're going to put her to death because she's been so bad. She murdered this little shepherd kid after trying to rape him. Oh, she's just done for. And she comes back to the convent and it's just all the nuns going, woohoo!
Playing guitar, rubbing on each other.
Everywhere. Yep.
That thing with the kid was kind of disturbing because he looked really young.
He does look very young. Yeah.
And I couldn't find the IMDb was absolutely no help on this film. I'm pretty sure there's only a couple of guys in this, and the guy that plays the devil is named in the credits, but no one else has a character name in the list of credits on this film. And I thought, well, it must be this kid, but he was in maybe one other movie, if it was even the right person that I picked out. But I thought he seems really young. He's not 15 like Alucarda and Justine, who are obviously not 15 in that film, but he looks like he's 15.
Why is he not screaming out? It's just he's getting attacked by her and he never says a word. And I'm like, okay. And meanwhile, his grandmother is within earshot, like right next to them, basically
2 feet away.
Yeah. But then after she murders the kid, they cut and La Abuela is there in bed with knife wounds and blood all over her, though she looks like she's breathing, kind of talking about that cinema sense thing. Like that's not one of those like, oh, that was very definite kind of thing. When it came to that scene and just the kid not crying out, that's when I started to glean the whole like, maybe this isn't real. Maybe this is going on in her head. But as far as thinking, oh, well, yeah, she's got the plague. She's having fever dreams. No, that didn't hit me at all.
No, and it still kind of felt like the hysterical woman type of thing. Is this a mental health issue she's having, or is any of this really happening? Kind of like that body swap thing, but in this case, it really just flummoxed me because I'm like, well, why? So was she making out with her?
A little room 237 going on.
And then everything just escalates where she just covers everything up by like doing the worst thing possible. I'll just set them both on fire so nobody finds me out. And then she realizes that she loses her necklace in his hand. And
when you get that moment when she's praying and then the rope appears over her hands and she's like, oh, cool, a murder weapon. And then she murders the old nun. You get that great scene of her being tortured, and then you realize, no, this is just her thinking, like, when they capture me, this is what they're going to do to me. So I'm like, well, if you're into torture stuff.
Wasn't super clear on a lot of points. And I thought, well, maybe it's the way I'm watching it because I am speeding it up a little bit. It wasn't sped up to the point where I'm like missing scenes or anything. It just kind of felt the languid pace. But yeah, the ending really bothered me. There was another film that did that, and I don't know if I should spoil anything. There's one of the French extreme films,
Haute Tension.
I think it was that one, actually.
Yeah, I walked out of the theater before the twist, so I was just like,
the end makes no sense.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, high tension. Yeah. I was like, fuck this shit.
It was also called Switchblade Romance when I saw it, which was a really weird title to put it under.
I don't mind twist endings so much, but this felt unwarranted. And like I said, I don't recall any hints to, not that you have to, but I think you should really lay some kind of foundation to the fact that, the twist in this, with it all being basically a fever dream, a literal fever dream, really bothered me just because there's no hint, even the subtlest of hints, unless, like I said, it's possible that I completely missed it. But I just don't remember there being anything about the plague. I couldn't tell you when this was taking place, really. Like Alucarda, I can't really tell either. I know it's in the past and we're still using horse and carriage. And
it's supposed to be, 1765? Isn't the date on the coffin 1750 and it's 15 years later? Yeah.
Is it 17 or 18?
It might be 18. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I did read that later on. You're right. I did miss that on Alucarda, but here I don't know if I missed anything. But I know I didn't miss any hint, or I'm pretty sure I didn't miss any hints about there possibly being a plague, and we don't see anybody else succumbing to that, and not even the animals are. The cow is just sick. I mean, they do say something about lungs, so I guess you can infer from that maybe the plague is roaming around the countryside. All of a sudden, oh, there's the nun that I think hung herself. Why is she walking back to her room? What? Wait, and there's the Mother Superior. She choked. Well, what? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. And then they open the door and she's laying in bed and, oh, she passed peacefully or whatever it is they say. Like, oh, fuck you, movie.
So Satan wasn't here at all, but then I think they throw in one more apple and you're just like, oh, fuck you. I'm done with your movie.
Yeah. And everybody comes by the convent doors. The Marcello and his grandma are still alive and this person's still alive. And oh, here comes the devil. Ah, fuck you.
It was a dream of extraordinary magnitude.
It's like the pilot to the Twilight Zone, where originally he pulls a movie ticket out of his pocket and says, oh, so it did happen. Ooh. And Rod Serling was like, fuck it, no, this doesn't work. Take it out. He had it right all this time.
The name of that Japanese movie is most commonly known as School of the Holy Beast.
That is literally on one of my watch lists.
You think of Mexico, you think of Spain, Italy. These countries are so not just Christian, but Catholic. And then it's like, what are these nuns doing in Japan? And yes, I know the Portuguese brought Catholicism and Christianity over to Japan and were very hated for a lot of it. You know, I've seen Silence. I know what's going on with some of this stuff. I've seen Shogun, or at least the original of it. But then you get into like Sleepy Eyes of Death, that whole series, and how the samurai's mother was raped by a Portuguese guy with red hair. And so now this poor Japanese guy's got this red hair. He's kind of marked for life kind of thing. The religious angle with Japan, it just seems to add so much more complication, because I think even, oh gosh, there's a filmmaker whose stuff I like a lot, and he even has like nuns in at least one of his films. And I'm just like, this is really strange to see these Japanese nuns, but it's great because, torture films were so big in Japan. So then you get the torture with the nuns. So you get all that flagellation going on and everybody's just whipping everybody. It's great.
Sounds right up my alley.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and take another break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
Hungry wives.
My evening is free.
On a diet of men.
Yeah, you're not bad in the sack, Mrs. Robinson.
Not bad yourself.
Everything women could want out of marriage, except the one thing they crave most. Joan, available. Shirley, dissolving her problems in drink. Marion, dabbling in witchcraft. They are all hungry wives with an appetite for diversion. Gambling with life and death.
Son of a...
Hungry wives lead normal lives, or do they?
One of these days you're gonna find yourself lying there. Some jackass between your legs.
What goes on while their husbands are at work?
You are sick, woman.
You know what I was doing.
Fall in the next room. And you go with it. Because you didn't know how to handle it.
I didn't know what to do.
I'll tell you how to handle it. You kick some ass, damn it. You kick some ass.
Hungry wives.
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at George A. Romero's Hungry Wives, a.k.a. Season of the Witch, a.k.a. Jack's Wife. Until then, I want to thank my co-host, Mark and Ryan. So, Mark, what is the latest with you, sir?
The Chasing Chevy Chase podcast is monthly, so that comes out regularly. My Cambridge and with Sean podcast comes out regularly. Wake Up Heavy is semi-regular, and this was actually a movie I can take off of my to-do list because I was planning on talking about this at some point on there and never got around to it. So thanks, Mike.
You're welcome, America. And Ryan, how about with you?
I have 2 podcasts. One is called One Track Mind, where we analyze film through the prism of audio commentary tracks. Directors, writers, actors, and craftspeople analyzing their own films in front of a microphone. It inspired me to do every other week, me and a guest discuss what they said, also in front of microphones. And Mike has appeared on 2 separate episodes, so hope to have him back soon. And then I also co-host Reels of Justice, which is a fake court of opinion, a movie court wherein a prosecutor, defender, judge, and jury try to conclude whether or not a movie is guilty of being a bad movie. And you can find that literally anywhere you listen to this podcast. And I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/OneTrackMindPodcast, where you can get every episode early and commercial-free in an archive of 500 hours of bonus content, including all the Coolness Chronicles, a 100-episode deep dive into the history and legacy of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and the Sherlock Chronicles. Mike also appeared Pletus. Check both of them out.
Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Do you want to support physical media and get great movies by mail? Head over to scarecrow.com and try Scarecrow Video's incredible rent-by-mail service, the largest publicly accessible collection in the world. You'll find films that are entirely unavailable elsewhere. Get what you want when you want it without the scrolling. And, of course, Alucarda is available, as well as Mansion of Madness, which is the one that turned into Dr. Carr's torture dungeon. So get that over there, I believe. So if you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, just like Mark, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They are all available at weirdandwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. And also don't forget about Ryan's Patreon while you're at it. Every donation we get, we being Ryan and I, helps the projection booth take over the world.